This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC, on location, San Diego, Ursa 2019, with Brett Maloley, friend of mine from Boston, by way now of Austin. So we got to rhyme that out. We'll do that maybe later when I have a couple of Moscow mules, Austin to Boston. Brett has been an entrepreneur in the space for all of his career. He's got a really interesting company that we're going to talk about called Ladder. And this podcast is going to be about the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur, learning from what you experience, and then taking all that learnings and turning it into a business that you're passionate about and that makes sense. So, Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off, just give your background from where you're from and how you've made your way through the sector, and and then we'll get to where you're at now and the frustrations that you're solving with Ladder.
For sure, yeah. I grew up in the fitness industry. Actually, my dad was in the space. He owned some health clubs and had a equipment distribution company. And I was just a kid who wanted to play baseball on TV for the rest of my life. And when I was in my early 20s, I realized that wasn't in the cards, and I had to get a job. And to be honest, I got into the fitness industry because it was the path of least resistance.
What gyms were they?
My first job in the fitness industry was as a trainer. I worked for Mike Boyle, strength coach out of Boston, and then I worked at a Lifestyles Family Fitness when I was in college, when I was injured, selling memberships. And
where was that?
In Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville, yeah. Lifestyle Family Fitness,
location.
LFF.com, back in the day.
Sales machine.
Sure. What gyms did your family own?
So my dad was involved with Racket Time International. So he was a racquetball player that got into the fitness business as a result of being in racket sports and managed clubs, and then sold equipment. He had a company called RPM Associates.
Oh, wow. That's going back.
Yeah, way back in the day. So, some of my earliest memories were running around, trade show floors and terrorizing the childcare rooms at some different clubs.
What most people don't know is that a lot of these health clubs that they work out in now are they're in like the racquetball court number 4, which is now like the CrossFit boot camp, and cycling is racquetball court number 7. And all these things have been retrofitted.
For sure. I mean, when I was selling fitness equipment, it was like that's what you do. You'd be like, all right, buy 2 of these Kinesis ones and put them in your racquetball court.
Right.
They didn't know.
We're going to turf over the racquetball court. Yeah, you could get a couple more people in there per hour than the 2 to 4 on the racket sports side.
Yeah.
So fast forward here to so you worked at LFF.
Yeah. So
and then where to go from there?
I got my first job, my first real job, working for Life Fitness. I was selling treadmills, and I was lucky enough to get hired by Life with no experience. And,
is that with Dave Young back in the day?
So my first interview, I remember, was with Phyllis Dannon and Scott Robeson. And I remember Phyllis asked me what my favorite type of equipment was. I had no idea. I said like Free Motion Epic because that's what they had. And I think I was going to get the job regardless because they knew my dad, and I was lucky that I did, and I did okay because most of my clients were people he also knew and that I knew.
It sounds like a better entree in than what hit the press yesterday with all these parents getting their kids into college with in crazy ways, man. That's just a.
But isn't that how every building is named though?
I mean, you're allowed to buy a building, you could buy 20 school buses, but you're not allowed to send a charitable donation directly to the rowing coach who doesn't have a charitable donation entity.
Yeah,
that's kind of what was going on. So you get into Life Fitness now. You're selling equipment. You work the front desk and you work the sales. So you kind of understand the industry, and you gotta. Basically your whole background was, understanding the sector and, listening and mentoring from your dad. So take us from Life Fitness to where you are today, and how everything that you've experienced firsthand, has kind of, shaped who you are today.
Yeah, so ended up starting a couple companies and was lucky to have some success there, and wound up working at a nutritional supplement distribution company, small publicly traded company. became the CEO of that company, and that company was working with health and wellness professionals to curate nutritional supplement programs for their clients. In exchange, they would receive points. They could use those points to buy product for themselves. I didn't start that company. I'm not super bullish on nutritional supplements, but it was just this epiphany to me. You realize for the first time, or I did, that these health and wellness professionals signed up to help people find happiness through health and wellness, yet they spend the majority of their time doing things they don't like and or aren't good at, right? It's a tough job. I wouldn't even say career at this point. And I became obsessed with it. But I wanted to find a way for these health and wellness professionals to sell something that they were more confident in. Mm-hmm. And when we started Ladder, the first thing we did was jump into what ended up being 50 weeks of user research. So we interviewed over 22,000 gym members, 11,000 trainers, and 1,000 physicians between Princeton Health and Robert Wood Johnson. And about 3/4 of the way through that user research initiative, we landed on what we believe to be the most finite product problem fit in the overarching market, which is a solution that democratizes access to health and wellness coaching, which I feel odd saying because that's such a cliche that's getting thrown around by so many companies. But for us, we believe the largest emerging scarcity is actually humanity. We're obsessed with the human. We want to leverage all things that technology has to offer to further scale the human's ability to help more people. Mm-hmm. After 4 beta tests, a 9-month live mobile-only beta, we launched the product to market about 13 months ago. We've got over 65,000 users. And
when you say 65,000 users, those are health and wellness coaches, or those consumers?
Those are both. Okay. So we call our users clients and coaches. Of the 65,000, about 10,000 are coaches, and the rest are clients. We have yet to launch any of our gym partnerships, and are here in San Diego to start to activate those. We've waited a long time to do so. I think we won't get a second chance at this first impression, so sure. We've been very selective with
Good for you.
who we want to work with.
Yeah, I think so. So before we go into the company, just talk about, you did a user research study that sounds like longer than what most people do when they evaluate an opportunity. So talk about for a minute how you trust your gut, but you're like, look, I actually got to do the work, and I got to make sure I'm right because I'm putting my name on the line here. Your name's important. It might be the only thing that matters when you're selling, a new company. Like, you are the company.
I mean, the 50 weeks was an overkill, to be honest. It was actually easier to continue to ask people questions than it was to take the next step, especially not being a technical co-founder. I think we could have cut it off about halfway. We did learn a lot, but not too many assumptions that we didn't have going in. The research with the physicians was particularly impactful. I mean, what they said to us was almost unanimous. If we're not performing radical or invasive procedures, we're prescribing medicine and or recommending healthy lifestyle behavioral changes and a coach.
Right.
But there's no coach.
Yeah. So tell us exactly how the system works. Who are these 10,000 people that you got on the system, and what is this a mission critical, like every day they wake up and basically they're in the platform? Are they running their business off of the platform? Are they running it? Are they getting curating all their information from it and then managing their clients through there?
So of the 10,000 coaches, they're using it in a few different ways. First and foremost, all of our coaches can use Ladder free of charge with their existing clients to better manage and engage and elongate the LTV of those analog relationships. Okay. If they do that successfully, and by successfully, they grade out at certain metrics internally from us and receive certain ratings from our collective clients, they can progress to level 2, at which point we start to work with them to monetize their former clients. So they bucket their contacts through contacts or Facebook contacts, and then we drive nurture and drip campaigns to those folks, acquiring them on their behalf. If they do that successfully, similar success metrics, they can progress to level 3, at which point we start to drive them clients. And there's a rev share.
So you're like you're basically a management system for their current relationships, and you're also a lead gen engine for them?
The SaaS component, the lead gen, or the management component was more of a hack. I mean, we wanted to build a platform business model. There were a lot of companies in the space that were driving SaaS models, and to us, that wasn't a big enough opportunity because the market is relatively small on the supply side, and to be candid, they don't have much money.
Yeah, sure.
So
you're basically saying, look, I want to give them an opportunity, just like Gmail. Like, I want you to do your email through me. I'm not going to charge you like $30 a month to do your email, but I'll once I have you, I'm going to figure out other ways to help you grow your business, and I'm going to participate in that.
Yeah,
Is that how you think about it?
We use OpenTable as a comp. I mean, I think platform dynamics are such that if you can acquire the supply side at a critical mass with a high barrier to exit, you have the opportunity to really monopolize that and do some interesting things. So,
what do you think about open chair as an idea? So if I got a 3-top and then I've got an open chair, and then you can come and join me for my meal as a different business model, completely
I like that.
Random idea.
I like that.
Maybe we'll do it where we'll solve loneliness with open chair, and you bring your health coach with you from Ladder.
Yeah, 2 open chairs.
2 open chairs.
You and your coach.
Probably 2 open chairs. That's what we'll call it. 2 open chairs and a supplement pack to go instead of your dessert. All right, trademark that before we have to deal with this other trademark situation that you told me about. So, what kind of results are you seeing right now, and what's your pitch at the show here to health clubs?
So first question first, what we're seeing is it's all about the coach. And as a platform business model, we are just there to provide governance and ideally enable more efficient and effective engagements. And that's really shining through. I mean, if you look in the App Store at our reviews, almost every positive review, which is thankfully almost all of them, starts out the same way, which is I love name of coach, which is great because it is about the coach. We're just the intermediary. As far as working with the gyms, it's been a weird dynamic. I was kind of out of the commercial fitness industry for a couple years. And
welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I've got a lot to say. It seems so confusing. Like we were at dinner last night with some of our advisors. We brought on an advisory board of folks that I really look up to, Rick Caro and
yeah, he's a good friend of the square.
Joe from Gainesville and Mel Kleist and Rodney Steven, and we're all talking, and it's like, what is going on? There's so much noise. I was at South by last week, a tech conference, and no one was talking about any of the things people are talking about here. It seems to be so
siloed.
Well, so feature driven, not benefit driven. Like to hear a guy like Joe really talk about AI, it's like that's not your job. Like, what is it going to do for you? That's all
right. Yeah, it's a fair point. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, technology's always been, behind the curve. I think it's starting to pick up now, where the technology's actually at a point where people are asking for it and it's there at the same time, versus the technology being so far ahead and being like, look, I don't even have the ability to think about what you're doing, and I don't really know if it's ready for me to like integrate into it. I feel like it's finally here at the same time.
I don't know. Maybe I'm contrarian here, but I feel like there's way too much noise. Like the majority of the components of the tech stack that a lot of people envision in the not so distant future are pretty far from what I think they'll look like. Right. Time will tell.
So explain that. So you're saying like AI is something that these guys shouldn't even be thinking about yet, or you think?
Well, everything's AI. Like, AI is not
artificial intelligence. By the way, is for our listeners who
like when you talk about AI, it's like, what does it do for me? Or like, here, look at facial recognition, right?
Right.
So it's like, all right, what is facial recognition going to do? It's going to essentially allow you to cookie a human, right? In a world where there's no other things to sell, right? So the value of like being able to follow someone's path through a digital world as a e-commerce consumer is an ability to target in the right ways at the right times. and drive messaging that that leads to heightened transactions. But in a gym, like, what are you actually finding out?
What do you get from that? You're saying
it's only a retention driver because there's nothing else to sell. You can't sell them like
I might speed up my way through the check-in process. That's about it.
Which is the only guaranteed touch point you have. So why would you even want to expedite that?
So I couldn't get into my office the other day, and there's a security guard in New York City, and there's a glass door, and she had to hit the button. So I put my face right up against the glass, and we did facial recognition right there, and she nodded, and then she opened it. And that's the extent of what needed to happen there. They don't need to put in a $10,000, facial recognition reader. I think we were good with the way we had it set up there, manual facial recognition.
When you asked if I would be on the podcast, I was pretty excited because...
Are you still excited?
I'm still pretty excited. I'm about the same level of excitement. But, when it comes to technology, like, if people talk like really fancy, then that's like perceived as a good thing. It's actually a really bad thing.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Like,
simple.
If it's difficult to explain, then it's you're not explaining it properly. Right. And, I think that when I talk about, it's not that there aren't incredible technologies that could be incredibly beneficial to us. I think that we need to take one step at a time and actually not start with the technology, but start with what we're trying to solve for. First get an idea of what your tech stack looks like and what your needs are and what your KPIs and metrics are and where you can move the needle, and then see if there's technology available that can help do that. And I think a lot of people are doing it incredibly well.
We work with InTouch and a couple other guys who are really saying, like, look, before you start doing some of the things that are a little next generation, like, let's get your leads into a system. Let's get that system to perform the way to get people into the club, sell them a membership, upgrade them to PT, and let's get them as part of the community before you start doing. Like, you don't have to go crazy. Like, that's a process that can be optimized.
Totally.
Let's start with that.
And I think everyone means well. I think it's, to be honest, and not to go like super deep
Just
here,
be honest on the show. That's all
I think it's kind of a systemic problem about where the content and information is coming from. So, like, we're here at URSA, right? And it's put on by the vendors, and all the vendors are selling stuff, and all the vendors are the ones creating the content and distributing the content. It's a little scary to have the biggest, like, aside from this, the club industry just launched a podcast. ABC Financial just launched a podcast. Brian O'Rourke's tech thingy has a podcast, and all those people are trying to sell services and convey information. And I think it's kind of scary. I think there's a lack of transparency and a lot of misinformation that's just causing a lot of confusion.
All right. Well, hopefully that this is the top podcast in the Halo sector. Our goal with our podcast is to make sure that people like you have a unadulterated mouthpiece into the minds of everyone who's important in the sector, and for them to understand, what technologies, what companies, what types of practices are going to help them be successful. And I like to listen. So those are our objectives here.
Yeah, this is great.
Cool. Well, I'm glad your level of excitement is at the same level as mine. So let's talk about, for a minute before we wrap up here, what's the best way to get onto Ladder? What's the experience? Where do you want to take the business? And it seems like you have a very rational view of growing a business. That we've had entrepreneurs come in, they say, I'm creating a $500 million company, I'm creating a $1 billion company, I want to build 1,000 health clubs. Like, let's build like 10, and then let's build 50, and then let's build 100, and like architect this thing into like reality sequentially. So how do you think about Ladder? Just did a 50-week test. How do you trust the data versus trust what the data is? What people tell you. And I say to somebody, stop telling me to like look at the data, like talk to people, and then that's the data.
Yeah, stop talking. Like, data is like a black hole. But I guess to zoom out real quick, the problem we're trying to solve, everyone knows the numbers. 19% of GDP devoted towards healthcare costs, 79% of that spent on what are theoretically preventable chronic conditions, totaling a projected spend of over $47 trillion over the next 10 years. As a human, I want to fix that. As a capitalist, I think there's a ton of opportunity in that $47 trillion. And I believe for a lot of people, health and wellness coaching is the best way to take the biggest chunk out of that. In its legacy state, it simply isn't accessible to the overwhelming majority of prospective users, and potentially more importantly, the overwhelming majority of folks that need it most. We want to change that. We envision a world inside of 5 years where 50 million Americans are working with a coach in this new way. We are not competitive to in-person. We envision an ecosystem where all gym members and furthermore all people are working with a health and wellness coach, but potentially less frequently in person, where the digital relationship becomes the backbone. Right now, we're focused on this initial scale and continuing to build the team and optimize and bring on partners that believe in what we believe in. We think that the market opportunity is a $50 to $100 billion market opportunity, and it will all come down to execution by the companies in the game now and the ones that are coming.
Awesome. Well, look, I'm glad we are connected. We share the same view. This industry is going to grow. It's got to be grown properly and sequentially. And at the end of the day, we're trying to help people get results. Mm-hmm. And the people that we're trying to get results for are simple people that want simple solutions, and it's scalable if it's done properly. So congrats on the success. Let's be in touch more frequently. And every time I see you, I want to have the same level of excitement mutually when we get together.
For sure. This has been great, and thanks for doing this. I know that it takes a lot of work, but a lot of great stuff.
Awesome. All right, man. We'll check in with you on the ladder.
Sounds good.
Thanks.